So important is the NASCAR news of this week that Devin is joining us from his 10th vacation since graduating college. Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of the 5 to Go podcast in the aura that is the post-NASCAR lawsuit. Yes, post-NASCAR suit. And we'll discuss how the settlement, just how we feel about what has come out here in the last couple of days, and also some big news that's happened on the silly season side this week. A shock departure in the O'Reilly Auto Parts series, the Snowball Derby that wrapped up earlier this week, and the unfortunate passing of Michael Annett, too. So let's get right into it here. I'm your co-host, and of the 5 to Go podcast, and of course, also with the traffic team at 11 Alive News, Rachel Cox-Rosen, Atlanta Journal-Constitution Gridlock guy, Doug Fireball Turnbull, and I get to be part of the announcing team at Performance Racing Network here. And by the way, during this show last week, I got a call from Brad Gilly, and I did find out my slab of races for next season, and among those, I'm going to get to go to North Wilkesboro for the first time. So I'm really excited about that, to get to do some pit road there. Joining us first off here, he will be moving the position as the sun moves, but he is standing in a spot that I've been to at Jacksonville Beach, the Christmas setup right along the Florida coast there, the home of my brother and his wife, Erin. And he's not staying there, but he's in the city that's the home of my brother who's in the Navy with his wife, Erin, and my new nephew, Bo. He is our recent UNG graduate. In fact, he walked this week. He decided to walk in Dahlonega so he could fly to Florida. Our roving racing journo, super racing fanalist. Is that enough superlatives for you, young man? Devin Kupka, how you doing?
I would hope so. I would hope so. I hope it is, but it's a lot warmer down here than it is in North Georgia right now. And it's kind of cooled off a little bit in the past, like maybe 40 minutes or so, and maybe, dare I say, it was a little too warm for our liking now, but it's mid 60s, going to be great all weekend here in Jacksonville, visiting some friends here. And then going to see the Jets play the Jaguars on Sunday, a game that they're probably going to get absolutely pummeled in. But yeah, should be a fun weekend.
Both of our football teams here, my Falcons, your Jets, played Florida teams, and the Falcons beat the Buccaneers. They didn't trounce them; they came back to beat the Buccaneers. Anything can happen, just like
the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are 1-6 this year in one-score games. That one win was against the Jets.
There you go. There you go. All roads point back to Devin Kupka's Jets. Hey, Dev, and I know Dan feels this way too, being a UNG alum himself, and me having somehow graduated college. We're both very proud of you for graduating. We know that you already wrapped up your classes and everything a couple months ago, but getting to walk here, we're sorry I couldn't go. I was stuck at work at 11 Alive, but we're immensely proud of you, buddy. You looked good in that cap and robe, but you look better in a Daytona t-shirt, man.
Thank you.
So proud of you. To think we met Devin when he was still in high school, man. That's so cool. So cool to see all you're doing here. And of course, we're joined by championship winning mechanic, 2018 Georgia Racing Hall of Fame inductee, the master maker of speed, working on those transmissions in the Dawsonville Speed Garage, Dawsonville Dano Elliott, wearing his namesake cap, no less. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good. Hope everybody's well. Hope everybody has got all those gifts bought up, because Christmas is just around the corner.
Less than 2 weeks away. And dare we say, let me be as cheesy as I can be, guys. Dare we say Christmas came for Jordan, Hamlin, Jenkins, Polk, and the like.
Yep.
Brett Griffin, former co-host of Door Bumper Clear, former full-time Cup Series spotter who loves stirring the crap. He put, and he's just messing around on X. I don't think he has much inside information here, but he said Denny Hamlin just became the richest or the wealthiest NASCAR driver of all time or something like that. And we don't know. I mean, come on. There's some dudes that have made bukus of money that happen to be NASCAR drivers. But fellas, the lawsuit's been settled. If you want to read the dirty details, go to the people that were actually in the court, and the ones that actually have sources inside the teams and inside NASCAR that are talking to them. But the basic rollout is on Thursday morning, they're getting ready for part 2 of testimony from a financial professor, basically, a guy who is really excited to sell his textbooks. He's scampered up to the stand, and then they say, wait a second, and they sit the jury out, and over a 2-hour period, a settlement was hammered out. And for what we've learned, and we're not going to learn all of it. We never will, right, Dan? We never will. But what we've learned, NASCAR teams will now get evergreen charters, is what they're calling them, evergreen places in the sport that are tangible and can sell. There was compelling testimony on the stand from basically another economics professor that the plaintiffs had hired for something like over $1 million as a financial expert to come up with a number and damages that they should be owed based upon the value that they should have from the charters. Okay, that's kind of where this came from. I think where the tide really started to turn, even if you didn't agree with the guy's numbers. So that was number one, evergreen charters. Number two, they're going to get a share. I didn't know they got 0% of the international media money from NASCAR. So it's believed they're going to get a share of that and of when NASCAR uses the sport's intellectual property and the team's likenesses of whatever to sell the sport outside of the things that the teams already get money from. They're going to get a portion of that revenue now. They were asking for a third of that revenue in these charter negotiations. There also is going to be some sort of damages, and this is where Brett Griffin's tweet comes from, awarded to the plaintiffs. And I'm sure some settlement of how the legal fees are paid for. So those are some of the things we know. The point is despite all of the angst, despite all of the negative things said, the dirty texts that got leaked out, or the inflammatory texts that got leaked out, they came out of that courtroom and we're inside the courtroom doing the same thing, shaking hands. We're glad this is over. We can move on and be better partners and the like. When you see Denny Hamlin and Jim France hugging Dan Elliott, you know that somewhere, at least to the media, we're playing kumbaya. So I'm going to ask you, Dan, first, because you followed this, have been as a deeper stakeholder longer than us. When you got the word, when Devin Kupka, and I learned it from Devin. I was busy in traffic world. Devin Kupka broke this to me. All right. So Dan, when you got the text from Devin, or however you found out that this thing was wrapped up, what were your initial thoughts? And then how was that processed over the day and a half since?
My thoughts were that you will never know what the final agreement was. You can dig as deep as you want to dig, but you will never know. And I would say that those are held tighter to the chest than the Kennedy papers, and you'll find out who assassinated John Kennedy before you'll know what's in the NASCAR agreement on settling. Because to me, it was both a win-win for both sides. And you have to say, for the other team owners who currently have charters that did not sign and get into this contest of going to court, that they should be throwing a party for Michael Jordan and for Denny Hamlin, because their stake in this probably just doubled or tripled in value based on what happened just this week. It's going to be phenomenal what price now, what the cost of a charter is going to be. And we'll get into that in a minute, because I've got some ideas about that too, and how it can affect, because the number of charters, who's going to be able to get any new ones, who's not, and what you're going to have to do, or what you're going to have to pay to get a current charter is all questions that I think you're going to be surprised at what these charters are going to go for now that they've settled. And as Devin said a few minutes ago, and we've talked about for years and years and years, is N1 is alive and well.
And for those that maybe that are tuning here for the first time, when Dan, you say N1, you mean
NASCAR 1.
Just like F1, right?
Just
so
like F1.
Yeah, and
now,
frankly,
only now, instead of F1 being above on the header, now N1 has just surpassed F1.
How's that?
As this progresses, I'll get into some of that, but it's the fact that, in a brief synopsis here, it's the fact that NASCAR owns so much more rights, tracks, so forth. There is so much more there, Doug, Devin. There is no comparison of what the two are to me in assets and being able to survive solely on their own.
Okay. And I mean, even though F1 teams and the sport itself are far more valuable worldwide at this point?
I don't care. N1 is going to surpass that.
Okay. Respond right here. N1 NASCAR will surpass F1 in terms of
Nice
value.
F1.
Okay, respond right here. I mean, I'll sign up for that as long as it's not just NASCAR, the entity, if it's the teams and the drivers and so forth and the tracks and everyone that are involved. Okay, Dev, what about you? You're on, I assume, social media or somewhere you were starting to see news filter out that things were changing at the courthouse there. This, again, was on Thursday. We're recording Friday afternoon. This was Thursday. When we did our last show, Michael Jordan was on the stand during the show. All right, like the seminal moment that really got the national media more in tune to this. So, Dev, a week, less than a week passes, and suddenly it's kumbaya and let's show me the money. So, how do you feel, and or what are your initial thoughts? Same question as Dan.
Well, I think this is the best outcome, I guess you would say, for both sides, not only NASCAR but for the teams. Because remember, Judge Bell said a couple months ago that it would be best off if the two sides were able to settle instead of Judge Bell settling. He said nobody's going to like it if the court is going to have to settle it. Luckily, in the end, NASCAR 2311 Front Row Motorsports able to come together, settle it at the end. And I think this is the best outcome that you could have had, because if they had to come down to a ruling, I don't think it would have been good. But the teams get what they wanted, and it seems like not only we're seeing the ripple effect from 2311, from Front Row Motorsports, but we also see teams like Hendrick Motorsports, Rick Hendrick putting out a statement as well in support, and seeing all this change coming for NASCAR headed its way. So I think it's really beneficial for not only NASCAR, but for the teams as well, getting more share of the money, and then also getting those, as we mentioned, evergreen permanent charters, which is just better. It'll, as Dan said, it'll double the value of what these teams are worth. And the Cup Grid only going to get more elite from here. I brought it up a couple of times, but it's going to be very hard for teams now that are trying to be an open team to come in and compete, now that the charters are permanent and the cost of competition going way up. But we have yet to see what's going to really come out of this deal. Just got announced yesterday. We still got a long while to go before anything major significantly happens, except for the obvious fact that the charter value of every team, every car that has one, has just pretty much doubled in value.
Least. And that is what the financial expert that was on the stand, I believe it was Tuesday, it all runs together. But his testimony was compelling, and I didn't hear the exact testimony. I heard the recap of it by Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi, okay? But he came up with a metric, and he had testified at like 30-something trials of this type, all right? He had been all over the place in other major sports, even with similar type of litigation. And he came up with a metric and based it on F1. Even though he got cross-examined about that being faulty, he came up with a metric of what NASCAR teams should be valued. One thing, too, that Richard Childress said, based upon the reporting I imbibed, is he compared the Professional Bull Riders Association, which is far more niche than NASCAR. Yeah. And he owns a team in that Austin Dillon is the general manager of, or some other title similar, and said when they made franchises, their teams went from this amount to this, something like several factors more. I can't remember the number. And when you're seeing this in other sports and you're seeing the insane value that Mercedes has in F1, when it just sold a small stake, that a portion that was owned by Toto Wolff, who's the team principal of Mercedes, he just sold a small stake to somebody else. It's like, it's hard to argue that. Now, you could say whether it's right or wrong that teams should get it or not. There's the very, 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 very compelling argument that it doesn't matter how much money teams get, they're going to spend it all. But the point is, when you see the fact that franchises are very much in high value when they're permanent, or evergreen as they keep calling it here, and B, when you see how much money the France family was pocketing, including during COVID when they had to lay off hundreds of people, and they still took home $30 in the black, or $30 million in the black. I think right there, when those numbers get out, it's kind of hard to say, hey, we're going to win this and the teams are going to lose. All right. The teams did not have, and Shannon McMenemy, the attorney that Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi had on, this is not a criminal trial where you have to go beyond reasonable doubt. You basically have to have a 51 to 49%. You know, is there just enough evidence, not beyond reasonable doubt? Okay. And I think at that point, once the plaintiffs rested their case, there wasn't a whole lot of choice in NASCAR's side. It's just they basically gave the teams what they were asking for, except now we had to spend this whole trial and $100 million to do it. And the last thing I want to say, too, but before we can get into and then what, because I know Dan has some and then what to add, especially as someone who's seen the sport radically change over 45, 50 years, okay? But also we need to point out 2311 and Front Row Motorsports get their charters back. Mm-hmm. I didn't mention that. That's a huge part of this. They could have won the case and gone out of business still. We could have having no charters and the sport having no charters until the case was appealed. And maybe that's the biggest relief out of all of this if you're somebody that just wants peace and harmony is we don't have to go 2 years of appeals, okay? But I lost the train of where I was going to go besides that point about 2311 in Front Row. So Jim France, the two things that stood out to me, and I would love to hear what you guys think before we get to Dan's thoughts on the repercussions in the sport, okay, is there were a lot of times that the $5 million a year, including bonuses, CEO of president of NASCAR, now Commissioner Steve Phelps, and then the God knows how much money head of NASCAR, Jim France. There were a lot of times on the stand where they kept saying, I don't recall that. I don't know. I don't remember saying that. I don't know. And they, emails that said they said something. People saying, well, Jim is still saying no about this. Well, Jim, and he called Penske and said whatever. I don't have any recollection of that. Man, I know that you don't want to incriminate yourself, and you might as well just deny, and put up with the consequence. But you don't deny because you're under oath. So you say, that's not my recollection of it. I don't remember. You can't prove I don't remember something. That was a bad look. That plus the bank accounts, bad look. And here we are, $100 million, 9 days of trial later. That's tough. So go ahead, Devin.
I think NASCAR was just in a really tough position, especially with some of the stuff that had come out prior to the trial, and then asking questions. Because you got to think about this too. How often is NASCAR, especially the higher ups in NASCAR, Jim France, Steve Phelps, Steve O'Donnell, for instance, how often are they asked these types of questions in a forum like that? Not very often. So
ever.
There's information I think NASCAR doesn't want getting out. So I think they play to that role where they say, I don't remember, I don't recall, which in reality, now that they went through this trial and even probably in the process of the trial said, you know what, this doesn't really look good for us. And look, they got a jury in there. Then you've got the court of public opinion as well. It just did not look good for NASCAR for a majority of this trial. And especially when you got into the upper echelon of the sport, Steve Phelps and Jim France, it just didn't look good. It just wasn't a good look for NASCAR. And you just kind of got the sense that this thing's going to end really ugly for NASCAR unless they settle, which is where we ultimately did end up. But it just kind of I just had this odd feeling that NASCAR was going to lose this trial and that a settlement was going to be the best outcome possible, in which we got. So
I got to say, before we get to Dan, and I agree, Devin, before we get to what you think, just potential, this is really super opinion when we get potential repercussions or not repercussions, but how does this affect the sport going down the line? This, to me, the part of me, and it's not all of me that felt this way, but the part of me that felt I wanted to see this go to trial because I wanted to see some of this stuff come out. I thought for once NASCAR, who's always ruled with and I love NASCAR, but they've always ruled with the iron fist and it's none of your business and we're in charge. I wanted them to be on their heels a little bit. I didn't want them to lose the sport and like lose the case. I somehow wanted this world where we could see what money they're making, where they would have to answer questions. Why did you ice out this competition? I'm using not legal terms, ice out, why did you do that? Did you do that? What about this? And even have the teams answer that. Because right now, especially now that nobody's publicly traded, it's nobody's business. And I wanted to know. And so we got to know, for better or worse. I don't think the sport's better because of it, but the curious side of me was happy to learn some of that stuff. I do not think it helped the sport overall. So I'm speaking, I know, in circles here, but in the end, it would have been tough to tell NASCAR you don't own your sport anymore, or you have to divulge of the racetracks, or the teams now partially own the sport, or whatever. They still get to own it. The teams have a forever seat at the table, and I'm sure they're ticked off, but the alternative was certainly probably a lot worse for everybody. I think most people seem to agree on that. Now, Dan, you were there in the days. Your heyday was you could walk in the truck and talk to Bill France Jr. It was a little bit different deal. It wasn't as corporate as it is now. And so as we digest this, where do you think, besides valuation going up, where do you think repercussions are, good and bad? I know you have some thoughts on that.
I've studied on this a little bit, but I don't think we even know, because my main question right now, Doug and Devin, is the fact that are we going to still remain at 36 charters and four positions that you can basically come in and try to make a race? Or I feel like this is ultimately going to go to a 40 car charter field that you won't be able to race your way into a race anymore. It will be a 40 car. And that's my opinion, is that this will get down to a definite number of charters and there won't be any opens to be able to get in on, adding more value for the owners, making it, as Devin said, a more elite club, and basically you're in a billionaires club anyway. So given that, and then the thing that I thought the most about was Little E wanted to get charters to be able to run, and nobody has talked about this that I've heard that's talked about what's going to happen for Daytona coming up if he wants to run, and how he will acquire, how charters will be acquired, and if indeed these things do go up in price by waiting this period of time. Now a charter could ultimately cost him double or triple. Or do you now align yourself with one of the other teams that are not, as we say, an elite owner team, and align yourself with them so that you'll have charters and be able to bring your personnel and your drivers in? Because to me, this is going to make the Truck and Xfinity series even more valuable, because let's face it, getting into a cup ride, given the amount the charters are going to be and what we're talking about in prestige, money, and power, so forth, it's going to be harder to come up the ranks and get into a cup ride in the future. It's going to be hard to get into a cup ride. You won't even
hard as a driver.
You won't even be able to show, but I think it's going to add value to the truck teams and Xfinity because of that, because you've got to have a level of getting up to this. And another question will be, will they do the same thing as far as charters, evergreen charters for the truck and Xfinity? Will they do that? I'd say that might be coming in the future, but I don't think it'd be right away. I think they're going to test the waters in this.
And that's what has confused me about the whole thing, is there's all this talk about the poor cup teams, but I mean, gosh, we had Tommy Joe Martins on, what was it, 2 weeks ago?
Yep.
I mean, that's a whole different ballgame. I listened to Jeremy Clements' interview with Kenny Wallace today, which, by the way, as an aside, I did not realize the extent of the Clements Racing association with Haas Factory Team and how they're going to be built out of their shop. Basically, they're going to be like a third car for them. And, that's a huge deal. But how Jimmy Clements is like, we have no competition to, my team running against Gibbs cars. I mean, he got to drive a Gibbs car 15 years ago, and he said he ran 65% and was P7. It's just such a fast car. You can't even explain. But all that being said, with the smaller teams, they have such a thin margin. I mean, day to day, some of them have to shut down in the offseason. How the charter talk, the media money talk, the IP talk, the international pool money talk, not pool money, the international media rights money talk, how that doesn't involve the Craftsman Truck Series and the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, it has confused me from the get-go.
Yep.
But hopefully it rolls downhill. It's the NASCAR Reaganomics trickle down theory, I guess. I don't know.
But let me ask you this before we move on: is what now? Does this mean that as the money begins to flow, that the workers, this is more money for the owners now? Are the employees of these owners going to get any more money, or do I need to go camp out at Michael Jordan's doorstep and beg him to help us sue the owners so that we can get paid more money?
I think you need to beg Denny Hamlin to sue or another driver to sue the owners. I don't know, man. Yeah, but see, and that's the deal.
I mean, you could get 23XI's garage or front row's garage team or traveling team say, you know what, we're not going to work this weekend until you pay us more.
Oh boy, yeah, and that's the deal.
See how that would go over.
Stage a holdout.
Yeah, this is millionaires and billionaires fighting over money, like most athletic standoffs end up being.
Yep.
And if it was the driver suing him, I'm sorry, but Cup Series side, almost all. I mean, we learned what Bubba Wallace's salary was about $5 million. We learned that Denny Hamlin's was $14 million. So you've got to figure the majority of Cup drivers have millionaire type salaries. The majority, I won't say all for sure. Joe Sixpack and Jan Sixpack, that doesn't get them buying more tickets. Cause they're like, oh man, poor Zane Smith. Dang, like this, it just doesn't. But I don't know.
Yeah, let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
Let me ask you this: at the end of the day, does the fan win or lose over this? Ultimately, what do you think is the fan outcome on this?
I think just like we talked about last week, is there anything you learned from this trial that is going to make us, the diehards, not watch the sport? Probably not. But does it make you more interested in the sport or more fuzzy feeling about the Daytona 500? Not at all. So, I don't know that the fans benefit too much at all. In fact, I do think that if this had gone the team's full direction, so let's think about what affects the drivers, the fans. It's really the at-track experience, right? I mean, in the end, the media deal you turn on the TV or streaming or social media, it's really, there's the product itself, which is a collaboration of the teams in NASCAR, and then there's the tracks, I think. So if you're the fan and suddenly the tracks have less money because most of them are owned by NASCAR, or now they're all up for sale because NASCAR would have to divulge of the tracks. Maybe I'm making stuff up. I don't know. I don't see how that goes better for the fans. Oh, great. Private equities bought my favorite racetrack. That usually doesn't go better for, as a former employee of a private equity owned place, that usually doesn't go better for them. So, yeah, it's tough to imagine it being a win. I think the settlement, if the teams are in a little bit better business model, and NASCAR only had to give up something, not everything, is probably the best thing for the fans, if anything is.
The one thing about the settlement I'll say is I would love to heard the testimony of Roger Penske.
Why? I'm also wondering too if we didn't settle. So Dylan Carter, who he replied to my X post about this. Dylan Carter. He replied to something I was tagged in. He's the cousin of my former boss, basically, something like that. He's a big time race fan, goes to a lot of races, and he brought this up, and I hadn't thought of it. He goes, "We never were going to hear Roger Penske and Rick Hendrick on the stand." No wonder there's a settlement. And I'm paraphrasing what he said. That's now again, respond right here. That's not my opinion, but it is interesting. This thing got wrapped up before Mr. Penske ever had.
What do you think they would have said? Would they have gone on the stand and said, "Hey, you know what? Maybe evergreen charters or permanent charters don't sound like such a bad idea." Was it going to be something along the lines of that?
Devin,
even though
here's the deal:
the money and how much money they were making.
What Dan said on this show last week about the cubic money of the outside businesses stuck with me. That's why there's three of us here, everybody. That's why we rarely do these shows without one leg of the bar stool here, okay? Because we need Devin's Gen Z super racing fanless perspective. We need Dan's, legacy perspective in this sport. And I don't know why, me, I talk a lot. But We need that. That stuck with me. It's not so they have documentation. It is out there that they wanted forever charters. All right. What's not out there is how much some of these businesses make, because here's how cross-examination goes. Rick Hendrick, they read a letter in court this week. He said, I've won 2 championships in the last 4 or 5 years, whatever period he used. I think it was 2 championships in the last 4 years, and my race teams lost $20 million. We got to fix this. That's paraphrase what he said. So he's talking about the 2020, 2021 championships, and they lost money. Now, okay, the NASCAR lawyer now comes up to Mr. Hendrick. Oh, you lost money. Well, your business here made this, and you have this government contract and that, and they'll list it all off and say, and you're telling me you can't put a little more money into your NASCAR business? Or you spent money on and you're telling me you lost $20 million? They did the same thing to Richard Childress, because Childress did take the stand. They did the same thing to Bob Jenkins. And those guys took it, and I think they had, from what I heard the recap of, I didn't hear the testimony myself, those guys did a pretty good job on the stand. You don't want Mr. H having to he didn't want to have to do that. I think I would have wanted to hear it, but
Devin, with an unlimited budget, how do you think Hendrick fared by going to Le Mans when they went to Le Mans with NASCAR, Chevrolet, Goodyear, and all the other people with an unlimited budget? How do you think that fared?
how did it fare? I don't know. They did pretty well, didn't they?
Yeah, it did pretty well, and I would say that there was a good bit of money, that if you started digging into the questions, that there was a lot of money being moved around there that somebody was privy to, that you wouldn't want to answer for on the stand.
And that they didn't have to include in their racing costs because it was a
exactly
special project. Yeah.
Right.
No doubt. And I don't think that made money either. I think that was let's go and see this for the potential of making money later. I can't imagine that selling diecast paid $100 million for a race car.
But indirectly, that would have made mega money indirectly, just from the information you picked up.
And also, too, Hendrick and Penske, so it was documented based upon different things and evidence that Jim France has a personal and friendly relationship with Roger Penske. Documented. We know just by there being Garage 56 being a Hendrick NASCAR compilation that Mr. Hendrick and the France family, they're friendly. They get along. And for Hendrick to write a very emphatic letter to them saying this has to change, which was read in court. They don't want to have to get on the stand and get cross-examined and put in a spot where they have to take a crap on the sport or have to open their books too much.
And this is just our opinion on this matter. This is
our opinion. We don't know. I did text Rick Hendrick about it at least twice a day. I don't know if you get these, Devin. I get this Hendrick Motorsports text trying to get me to buy the latest Kyle Larson something. And I wrote back and said, "Hey, how do y'all feel about testifying next week?" And they didn't respond. So I've texted Mr. Hendrick. It's him texting me. All right, so
you might get a text message of the doodle that they do in court of Rick Hendrick testifying with his autograph on it. They might offer you that next.
Yeah. Actually, was there court cartoonists or the court draw? Do we have courtroom art?
I think there was. There was last week at some point, or maybe earlier.
I want a Jim France signed courtroom art. That's it. That's what I want.
Yeah, and then you can hang it up on your wall back there.
I think I would auction it off, man. Give it to charity, auction it off. But yeah, that'd be great. Jim France just stone-faced sitting on the stand. God, yeah, that's what I want. Okay, respond right here. That's Kenny Wallace says. Okay. Hey, I did respond right here in one of my Channel 11 mobile videos I had to put out. I was like, someone I know says, respond right here. I mean, why not? So lawsuit settled, repercussions years down the line. We'll see what happens. Let's move to something else. And I think in the end, we walk out of this with a better taste in our mouth than we had last Friday, I feel like, right? I mean, it's settled. It's not hanging over the Daytona 500, some appeal. And I feel we've had this exercise. Let's move on and hope to God that we didn't chase off the last 12 people watching NASCAR. Okay. Now, and by the way, last thing, big props to the media that covered this. There's a select dozen to 15 people that were in the courtroom, and I mentioned some names already. Just an outstanding job. Thank you for informing us. All right, we got some news while Michael Jordan or just after court ended last Friday. That Michael Annett, 39 years old, who's been retired from NASCAR for the last few years, passed away very suddenly. The cause not specified. He won a total of one NASCAR race, and I was there for it. Daytona 2019 Xfinity Series race, or now O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race for Junior Motorsports. He spent the most time the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series at JRM, driving either the 5-car or eventually the 1-car, and seemed to be well liked. I've interviewed him several times. Never broke through to be a consistent winner. I know that Dale Jr. had a soft spot in his heart for him, and being in that press conference when he won, Annett did, was a special thing because he finally broke through. But unfortunately, he passed away, 39 years old here, guys. I mean, I don't know how closely you followed him or anything like that, but just any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I just remember when I first started watching NASCAR, that seeing him in the Xfinity Series and that pilot, I believe it was the pilot number 1 car, but sad to hear somebody go so early in their life.
It really is sad. Really is sad, too. He also had a couple of ARCA Series wins in 2007 and 2008. I thought he was a full-time ARCA driver for some reason, and he won a bunch of races. But he did have a couple of ARCA wins there. Also was full-time in the Cup Series for 3 seasons there. A couple of H. Scott Motorsports, and also 1 season with Tommy Baldwin Racing. 106 Cup Series starts when Michael Annett passed away. And then, Dan, I don't know how far back the next obituary the next person that passed away goes, but Rick Otis, who's his nickname, Otis Hodges, who drove Kevin Harvick's truck when he was in the 4-car for a long time and was a Legacy Motorsports Club or Legacy Motor Club. Sorry, it's been a long week. Okay, but he passed away too. A lot of people seem to know him. Did you know Rick Hodges at all? Did he go back to your intersection?
No, but I knew of him, and I knew that he was a good driver, and had a lot of respect for all these people that are trying to come up through the ranks and make it, and just gives you a little idea how fragile life is, and heartfelt prayers and sympathy to the family. So this is tough to deal with, especially this close to the holidays.
It really is. It really is, and he was, further advanced in age, so to speak, than Annett, but nonetheless, still somebody. I heard TJ Majors talking about Otis Hodges on Dirty Mo Media's Dale Jr. Download this week, and he was someone that he was involved with the Bud car too. He was I don't know if he was their actual truck driver or what. I think he was, but he was also in the legendary number 8 Bud car too. Some silly season things unfolded. We're just going to buzz through these and call it a show a little earlier than normal here, just because Devin's got a Budweiser truck right down the road from him with his name on it, and he is. It
has departed.
All right, Dev, send me your Venmo, buddy. Send me your Venmo. I
gotta go find it now.
I'm going to slide you a slim ducat, okay, to help fund tonight's watering festivities, okay. So some other news now. We it was shocking about Michael Annett. I'm not making light of that at all, and Rick Hodges. But this was a shock too on the silly season front. You have a driver who's won a couple races in trucks, heralded rookie in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, won Atlanta Motor Speedway or Echo Park Speedway. Everything changes names. But Nick Sanchez puts out a statement that said over the last weekend, he was informed he would not be driving the number 48 Chevrolet for his sophomore campaign. And that is a weird time to find out that your ride is gone, especially with a team that seemed fairly sound, Big Machine Racing, Scott Borchetta. They've had some modicums of success. He brought them their first win in 3 seasons. They had to go back to Tyler Reddick and I believe Texas Motor Speedway. So he was an upgrade, so to speak, over Parker Kligerman, but he was announced that he was not going to be there. Now, the announcement of who is replacing him has not been made. Although I think there are people that know, and Lee Spencer on PRN's Pit Reporters show, which, by the way, that show is about to have its last couple of episodes here. It's ending at the end of 2025 after a 26-year run. But Lee Spencer said that she had heard that the Harvard-trained optometrist, Dr. Patrick Staropoli, would be replacing Nick Sanchez in the car. Obviously, a more money situation there, guys. But that Dan, just, I mean, up-and-coming driver, and to have somebody who's roughly my age stepping into the car, it just seems that doesn't feel great, does it? I mean, I'm hoping Nick Sanchez has a better go. What'd you think when you heard the news, Dan?
This doesn't feel great, but as far as being surprised, I'm not, because it seems like we're hearing more and more of this lately than ever before, and don't know what the reasoning is behind it, but I guess somebody felt led to do a little restructuring, and it depends on the contracts as to how quickly you can move and do this, or whether you can do this.
No doubt, no doubt. Seems weird to have the news happen now, but people rolling around with money, and that is no shade on Staropoli. He returned to the Truck Series after years of not driving, and he's Harvard-trained optometrist. A cool story. I covered that doing Bristol Pit Road when we did the truck race there back in April. But it's like, how did you go from Sanchez to Staropoli? The only one word is money. Yeah, Dev. Nick Sanchez said he looks forward to more opportunities, and maybe he's got something up his sleeve. I don't know. Do you have any scintilla of a sense where someone of his ilk could end up this late in the game?
I'm sure, because things are a little bit more in the lower series, at least things are a little bit more fickle when it comes to these. We even saw it this year, right, in the O'Reilly Auto Parts series, that driver X team is moving on from X driver mid-season, and I feel like some of these deals do come together closer to the season. It's not like the Cup Series where the grid is practically elite there. Not so much in the O'Reilly Auto Parts and the Truck Series. So I'm sure he could probably put together a part-time schedule, or maybe even a full-time schedule with the team. It is a little bit late into the off season, but I mean, anything could happen with how these teams operate
for sure.
now.
And you just, Nick Sanchez, from what I've heard people say, talking on podcasts and stuff like that, people that are informed, that he does have some money with him. So he could certainly slide into something, but what someone like him has been driving quality stuff, and I wonder if he's a candidate for Colleague deal. So Colleague still has 2 trucks unannounced. One of them's that free agent truck where they're going to have a different driver each week. The other one is a driver that apparently has already been picked from the short track ranks and unannounced, that won a gong show type competition. But I'm wondering if there's a place for him to slide into a truck full time to coalesce and kind of figure out what's next. So we'll see with Nick Sanchez there. Also, too, on the Xfinity side, Levar Scott. Levar Scott is moving from a couple of years full-time in ARCA, having not won a race, by the way, to go up to Alpha Prime in their number 45 Chevrolet. Scott actually debuted in the series this past season, and is going to be in the 45 there. He has a similar trajectory, and I'm not saying this because he's African-American, Devin, but a similar trajectory to Raja Caruth, where he comes in, he's saying and doing the right things, he's working hard, it seems, humble, and I've gotten to meet and talk to him. I really like the dude, but he didn't have a lot of success at ARCA, but he's been able to advance forward, and he's skipping over the Truck Series there. So what do you think about the prospects for Levar Scott, who's going to be co-owned by his team will co-owned by our guest from a couple weeks ago, Tommy Joe Martins?
Yeah, I think that'll be something to watch out for, see what he does next season. He was the star in some of the ARCA races this year. I know not always the best results, but looks like he had that. Wasn't it HendrickCars.com that was on some of his cars in ARCA? So he's got some sort of funding behind him. And normally when you have some of those top tier sponsors, which HendrickCars.com, which would be one of them, normally that's a pretty good sign if you have some of those big sponsors backing you that are high-end sponsors.
No doubt. And, of course, HendrickCars.com going to be the big partner for Raja Caruth, who goes full-time in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series this year, in a permutation between Junior Motorsports and Jordan Anderson Racing. They're going to split that up, too. All right, so some other news. Now, we talked about drivers going, oh, God. Okay, so Chris Wright, who went epic at Daytona this year when he missed pit road, didn't hit brakes in time, pit road, cleaned out Josh Bilicki. Then he and Bilicki, I think, had another run in at Circuit of the Americas. Chris Wright also lost his ARCA ride mid-season because sponsorship wasn't paying and all this stuff. Well, he'll be full-time in the McAnally Hilgeman number 81 truck, replacing Connor Mozak. No word on Mozak's future, although he seems to have had a funding apparatus with him that's going to take him elsewhere, I'm sure. So Chris Wright to the number 81 truck. Dan, I know you followed Chris Wright closely and have meticulous long reams of notes there. Now, I'm not even going to ask you a question about it, unless you want to say this guy crashed everything, though. I mean, what? Show me the money, right?
Yeah, my whole notebook here, reporter's notebook, dedicated to Chris Wright.
Reams of notes. Yeah, I mean, it's big. Chris, K-R-I-S. But here's one, Dan, that you and I watched, okay? Daniel Hemrick is going to be back for at least one more year in the trucks with McAnally Hilgeman. Napa's returning in what they're calling a multi-year partnership. Of course, Napa and its suppliers have had years-long association with Bill McAnally. He'll be in the 19 truck. We mentioned a week or two ago that Christian Eckes will be in the 91, replacing Jack Wood. So McAnally Hilgeman's looks like it's just about set its lineup for next season with 4 or 5 different trucks. It feels like they own half the truck series. Rick Ware Racing moving. This was a surprise to me. They're going to remain on the Roush campus, the RFK campus, but they will be an RCR affiliate and switch to Chevrolet next season. How do you think that's going to work, Dan, wearing bow ties at the Blue Oval campus?
I don't know that that's going to go over so well, but in the scheme of things, as I've said before, nothing right now seems to surprise me very much at all on how this is all, because it ends up being pretty much the same players, and other than who you affiliate with being the most important thing. And that is to me what's going to drive this coming year, is who the affiliations are with, and whether you're bettering yourself or whether it just ends up being, as we talked about earlier, being a lateral move, and you're just, because the injection of money coming in on the cup level obviously is going to filter down, but how that ends up funneling into the performance side of it, and how much they gain or benefit from this really is going to come down to these associations with whoever's associated with a manufacturer, I feel.
No doubt. By the way, in the fine print of that story, so the void open there is that Colleague Racing will be unaffiliated this year. This could be a tough year for the 16 and the 10 cars. We talked about that last week when Ty Dillon's news about him returning to the 10 car came out. But that opened a void with RCR, that's a customer relationship, right? I mean, RCR could replace the money, so to speak. Show me the money. And Rick Ware has managed to run a lean operation and still keep a car on the track each week there. By the way, in the fine print, they will be leasing their charter from Legacy Motor Club. So remember, there was other litigation this year, Legacy Motor Club and Rick Ware Racing. But if I read it correctly, they're already leasing out a charter to the number 60 RFK Racing team. They will now be leasing a charter from Legacy Motor Club because they had agreed to sell it already, which means that whole story that Associated Press had about TJ Perchier buying Rick Ware's charter, I'm not saying it was untrue, but it certainly doesn't materialize for 2026 because that's the charter that Priest is using in the 60. Everybody got that? There'll be a test later. Frankie Muniz, upon his announcement that he is returning to the truck series in the number 33 truck, mentioned that he thought he was done racing after this season. But things came together and he's back and with what's now called not Rayum Brothers Racing, but Team Rayum Racing, C-level truck series team. Frankie Muniz will be driving for that. He's also going to run some another racing series outside of NASCAR, something down the rungs, but he'll be spinning a lot of laps this year. All right, so there's silly season stuff. Last thing I want to end on here, Snowball Derby weekend. Dan, have you been to Five Flag Speedway? Is that a place you did any short track racing, or did you do any recon visits to Pensacola as part of your Gresham Motorsports Park time, or what?
Yeah, went to Five Flags down there several times, and Tim and them do such a good job out down there, and I'm proud of him for continuing that legacy on and being part of that. And yeah, I kept up with that, and it was quite an interesting weekend with the weather being the headline.
Yeah, no kidding. Unfortunately, for as good of a track record as NASCAR had with weather in 2025, that was not the case. Everything was delayed just about in Pensacola.
Yeah. I guess you could say the weather spared itself for NASCAR, but then dumped all the rain that NASCAR was supposed to get most of the second part of the year on Pensacola this
It's
past
tough
week.
too, and when you have dozens of teams showing up, and you have there's 40 or 50 pro late models, 40 or 50 super late models, and then all the fans, the diehards. And if you're coming to this race in December, a short track race, you are a diehard fan. All right, no way around that. That was tough. You saw Ryan Preece make the race and withdraw because they'd just been there too many days, and those were guys working on his cup car, I guess. He had to get going. You saw Noah Gragson miss the race. They had engine issues on the Rhett Jones number 30. I watched qualifying on Flow, but I don't pay for the Flow subscription. I watched it on YouTube, I guess, and so I didn't see the race, but I followed updates. Big props to Matt Weaver, who somehow is like in court and in Pensacola at the same time. I don't know how he did that. That guy is a warrior, but I followed his posts a lot. But here's what happened. Stephen Nasse, I think he was 0 for 15, although he had won and been disqualified because of parts and post-race tech before. He now wins the Snowball Derby. Pinellas Park, Florida, Stephen Nasse. I feel like I'm in the booth of Gresham right now, Dan. This is a guy that used to tear it up at GMP, man. I mean, in a good way. And he has been just one of the epic Southern super late model racers over the years. But he doesn't win it just by a clean pass. What happens? Ty Majeski, the Truck Series champion from 2024, one of the best short track racers in the country on pavement, gets disqualified for jumping the restart. They throw a yellow and say, don't do that again. They rule that he does it again. They black flag the car that had dominated the race, leaving Stephen Nasse, number 51, to take the victory there. Dan, I'm going to ask, I'm not trying to skip over you, Devin, but Dan, this happens at the Snowball Derby a lot, where you have the winner Chase has been disqualified, Christopher Bell has been disqualified, and we mentioned Nasse. It's like every other year, somebody either gets thrown out in post-race tech or there's a penalty. I mean, did you watch the video on this or see any of the commentary on it? Did you have any thought about how they handled the Ty Majeski deal?
I've got thoughts on it. I'm not going to inject myself in it because, as is said, it's kind of past history, and they ruled and they stuck by the rule of what they thought, and by running the track at Gresham, you get into those deals where you have to make judgment calls, and it is a split decision kind of on what calls you make, and it's hard to do because you see these people run so hard and they deserve to win because they've run so hard, but circumstances don't always turn out the way that you want them to, and just sometimes the heat of the moment or the passion, and you either get quick on the foot, or let's just say sometimes maybe the person next to you is a little bit light on the foot and doesn't get started. So it is a judgment call. I respect the call that they make, and I respect them for sticking to what they did and how they came about the conclusion that they did.
I agree with you on that. I think when it's so close and it's the dominant car of the day, you look at it as a whole and go, golly, man, the guy should have just won. Good Lord. But also, Ty Majeski probably didn't need to push the issue. And just hearing other people talk about it probably let Stephen Nasse get in his head a little bit, as he was told on his radio from what I was reading on X. I wasn't watching it live, but see, radio transmissions transcribed. They were telling Majeski in the 91, hey, watch the 51 on this restart. And Majeski had been questionable on restarts all day. Yep. And instead of going in the box, he tried to go as early as possible so Nasse wouldn't hold back on him. And although they are allowed to slowly accelerate up to the box, they ruled that he went before the restart box. Majeski, and I watched a 3.5, 5-minute interview with him afterwards, said, what do you mean go? I mashed the gas in the box. But that's not what race control saw. They did have a race official Freddie Query, I think, is that who it was? They had somebody who's followed it a long time and been a mainstay in the sport in turn 3 watching the restart box. It wasn't done from the control tower. So that there is that. So anyway, congrats nonetheless to Stephen Nasse. Quickly, the drivers that finished in the top finishers in this race, Stephen Nasse won. Dawson Sutton, Truck Series rookie last year, he finished second. Jake Garcia, Monroe, Georgia. Jake Garcia, who had just won the World Crown 300 at Cordele, at Cordele Motorsports Park, or whatever it's called now. They changed his world. What is it? Is it Cordele World Speedway, Devin?
I think it's Cordele Speedway. That's the sign I saw.
That's it. Cordele Speedway in Georgia. He had just won the World Crown 300.
Or Cordele Motor Speedway, one of the two. Has
Cordele,
Speedway in the name.
Nonetheless.
Cordele.
In Crisp County.
There we go.
But the watermelon capital of the world. Tell Ross Chastain that. Anyway, Jake Garcia was third. Casey Klein, and I don't know much about Casey Klein, was fourth. Jake Finch, James Finch's son, finished fifth. Matt Craig, we saw him race at Gresham. He was sixth. Ty Fredrickson, seventh. Preston Peltier, another one. He won the wait, is that who I'm – didn't Preston Peltier win the World Crown 300?
I don't think so.
Or am I getting him mixed up with somebody else?
Yeah, I don't remember him winning the World Crown.
Wait, I think he's a Hendrick Motorsports employee. Wait, hold on. I want to look that up. Hold on. Preston Peltier. That shows how – yeah, he won the World Crown 300. And,
what year was that?
Year here. Hold on. Yeah. Oh, gosh, it doesn't say. Oh, come on, man. And the 30th running of it. So what would that be? And gosh, I'm sorry. He won it over Bubba Pollard. It doesn't have the date on it. Okay. I'm sorry. One sec, guys. I know this is 2013.
2013.
So 2013. Yeah, August of 2013. Preston Peltier. Yeah, because Casey Roderick won it in 14. Anyway, okay. Sorry to make y'all wait as we went through that. I was like, because I get him and Preston Pardis, who runs the road course races, some in NASCAR, mixed up. But anyway, Preston Peltier is 8th. Hayden Plyman was 9th, and 10th went to Derek Thorne, who has dominated in this race before there. There were only 9 cars on the lead lap at the end of this one, but it looked pretty sporty to me watching some of the highlights there. So, Devin, I know this isn't like your cup of tea, but did you, and I'm not making a pun on your last name, do you have any thoughts about World Crown 300, or sorry, the Snowball Derby? Did you follow any post about it or anything?
Not this year. I saw some of the stuff that Matt Weaver posted on X. I saw the when Ty Majeski went to protest at the end of the race. I saw that video. He's like, all right, I'm protesting. I saw that. That's all pretty much all that I saw. And the weather, of course.
And Majeski wasn't the total whatever about it. I mean, but he was certainly – he said it's one of the biggest losses he's ever had, just having it right there in his hands like that, and it being such a prestigious race that you have to wait extra. It was run Monday afternoon and evening, instead of Sunday and all this stuff.
Does that kind of look like the NASCAR champion at the end of the Phoenix race? Is that kind of what that takes the place of there?
Ty Hamlin. Ty Hamlin. Yeah, no kidding. Hey, respond right here. Hey, lastly, we'll go from Snowball Derby to, man, here's the future. Keelan Harvick, from what I heard, and I didn't get to watch the race, drove through the field twice and didn't wreck anyone doing it, I don't believe anyway, as a 13-year-old to win the Snowflake 125, which is the Pro Late model race that, because qualifying was so delayed on Saturday, and then they had to run the last chance races, the hooligan races, if you will, to get into the main show. This Pro Late model race didn't end until about 3 a.m. Sunday, which I love racing. Man, that sucks. Okay, but Keelan Harvick, the 13-year-old, number 62, he wins with his dad in the announcer's booth, by the way, I believe. Or no, his dad was in the announcer's booth for the Super Late model
Yeah,
stuff.
but Devin, you really
what do you think about Keelan Harvick, Dev? I mean, you rooted.
Doug,
Go ahead,
now
Dave.
you really know why Keelan won that race. So age over age there, as far as nobody else could stay up that late.
That's yeah. He's used to pounding Mountain Dews and playing Roblox or something like, or whatever, Fortnite.
It's so crazy that Keelan Harvick's 13 now, because I thought he was still below the age of 10. Like, I thought he was like
That's tough.
8. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting Brexton Bush
Yeah,
mixed
Brexton
up.
Bush is 10. Brexton is 10 because he was born in 2015.
Golly.
That was right where he was born right after Kyle broke his leg. Yeah. So that's big stuff, man. That's big stuff. So anyway, Keelan Harvick though, and he has beat his dad in races now. I mean, that's just incredible. I don't want to put the pressure of the world on anyone, nor do I want to put it on Connor Zilic as the Cup Series rookie. But that's a big story, and that Snowflake is no joke. We're saying, Dan, it's the pro late model race, and the supers are the next day. But gosh, that's the quote Xfinity race of that schedule down there, and it's almost as prestigious, right?
And the fact that he ran that race so clean and raced so many people to get to the front and stay there and not make mistakes is incredible. And the fact that you looked at the car, and like I said, just the fact of youth, it's hard to beat youth when it comes down to running and staying up and doing all this stuff. It's hard to beat youth, but at 13 years old, this is quite incredible.
It really is. By the way, the minimum age in Xfinity is down to 17 for the tracks that are under a mile and a half, and the road courses, right? That's how Brent Cruz is going to be almost full time in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series coming up next year. Truck Series minimum age is 16. Keelan Harvick's 13. We're right on the edge, man. And I don't even know what it is in ARCA. I feel like ARCA is like, oh, you show up, but we're right on the edge of seeing that next wave, and it's just hard to imagine. But the calendar is undefeated. So hey, we've covered the after aura. I'll say it again so I can get some Gen Z points with Devin. Aura, the after aura of the antitrust suit, and we talked about silly season. We mourned the loss of Michael Annett, Rick Hodges. We talked about the snowball and the snowflake. Any final thoughts? I'm going to give it to you first, Dev, because you got the sun in your eyes there at 65 degrees Jack's Beach.
And I'm bathing in the sun, getting some much-needed vitamin D after the cold and cloudy weather up in Georgia that y'all are having to deal with.
It's nice up here.
I'm going to be in the warm Sunday at Everbank Stadium, and it's going to be freezing cold in North Georgia. So, and the weather is going to get warmer the rest of the week, so I'm actually going to bring the weather with me when I come back.
Oh, when are you getting back again?
My final thought.
Oh, when it's 24 degrees. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I got a leash on the weather. It's like a walking
dog. Got it. That makes total sense. Okay.
But anyways, my final thought with the charters being permanent now and the teams getting more of a share of the revenue. Now it's going to be more up to the teams now to essentially, because they want more of the piece of the pie, right? One of the reasons why they got into this lawsuit, and they love these permanent charters. Now they're going to have to put in more effort than they did before to help grow the sport of NASCAR. And that's one thing I really, really would like to see from the teams, and maybe even the manufacturers step up a little bit as well and help promoting the sport and making the sport more popular, and maybe get back towards what the glory days was 20 years ago. But at least try to grow the sport a little bit more, because one thing I noticed with F1, talking to people that like F1, they have stars in that sport, and now more than ever, it's going to be up to the teams to help grow the overall revenue for the sport, which means pumping the existing talent that you got in your race cars.
Well, we got one heck of a YouTube short right out of your final thought there, Dev. Now, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to compare the two for me, just because F1 is worldwide and because it's the hip in thing right now. And it's hard. You could promote the heck out of something. If people don't care, they don't care. But I do agree, put up or shut up. Okay, it's been put up now, or it's time to put up now that the case has been shut up, I guess. I'm with you on that, Dev, for sure, man. And, hopefully it trickles down like we talked about earlier. Dan, final thoughts from you, man.
Will now be trying to get an equivalent or what we'll see in the future as to what the Cup drivers will be paid, if the trend continues to be paying the same or if this level goes up. And also, too, really curious to see how it shakes out on how many charters. Will NASCAR restrict still the number of charters that you can have, or will teams be able to purchase more than what they were or had, whether it be 3 or 4? Will they be able to get or buy more than this now?
Hey, that's an interesting point. I'm for it's Hendrick, and is there another the other 4-car team, and Gibbs. Hendrick and Gibbs are the 2 4-car teams at Cup, right? Because everybody else is 3. I wonder if these valuations go up enough that they consider, they're grandfathered in, but I wonder if they consider if it would be more profitable if the valuation is as high, because they're high performing charters. If the valuation is high enough that, and I'm making this up, this is total opinion, this is based off of what Dan said, just as a thought exercise. Alex Bowman, not the 48 team has not been great in a while. And out of the Gibbs camp, you could say the 11 team, when Hamlin retires, do you try to groom someone else? Or do you find another suitor and cash out on that one charter? If the revenue model makes sense coming in, because value doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much my condo's worth if I don't sell it, right? And we lost Dan there for a second, but I'm glad we stayed through that. But it does, I wonder if it's more valuable at some point to sell one of those. But of course.
Yeah. I mean, if you're ever strapped for cash, Hendrick Motorsports or Joe Gibbs Racing, you could sell your charters for a bunch of money now. And there's definitely people that are interested in getting into the sport and will be in the years to come. Maybe even a Dale Earnhardt Jr. who, take a look at his diecast sales. Justin Allgaier, number 40, ran one race this year, top selling diecast of 2025.
And by the way, that
Just
Traveler's
saying.
whiskey, I got to sample some of that when I was down in Jacksonville seeing my brother 2 weeks ago, and it was excellent stuff. So yeah, the Chris Stapleton whiskey, that is the Allgaier sponsor, number 40. Yeah, I didn't mean to look. I don't think they're actually going to stay. They're going to keep those as long as they want. But if they lost a major sponsor or something happened and they were looking long term, they could cash out on those and then allows another team to expand or to join. So, hey, my final thought is I'm glad it's over, but I think it was a worthy exercise. It's a shame so many feelings got hurt. I hope the fans don't hold it too much against the sport. Let's move on, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the rest of this offseason brings, including what the points championship format's going to be. Now that we're through all of this and we're approaching the first of the year, the rules bulletin will be out next month. There'll be tests coming up at Rockingham, I think, for trucks in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see what unfolds for this season there. I'm sure there's more that we don't know that has nothing to do with a daggum lawsuit. So happy holidays, everybody. Be sure, hit us on Facebook. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and GoPRN.com. I was discussing with PRN last week. They're very happy to have us on there, and I'm sure we're going to find some ways to get it out in a more, hopefully, in a way that's more prolific than it is with PRN right now. So I'm excited about that. But Dan, Dev, thanks for making your time, especially you, Dev, being on the road. Dan, you in the middle of your work day. Me, I'm honestly past bedtime for as long as I've been up. So there we go. But thank you all for joining us here. Be sure to share with someone, comment. I put some questions that nobody, I think, answered in the Facebook group this week, 5 to Go podcast. Ask what you think about the lawsuit. We'd love to know what you think. Special shout out to Jeff Vorick, who texts me every time an episode drops. All right, and he said specifically that he thinks that you, Devin, Dan, and me, and him having a beer at a bar would be a great idea, and we'd shut the place down with all the crap we would talk, especially if Dua Lipa showed up. He said that. All right, so.
I'm down to make a trip to Savannah sometime soon. I haven't been there in
almost 5 years. Bro, it's on your way home. Just take a different route home. 95 to 16. It's on your way, man. We're on the Devin Kupka post-graduation 10 trips tour, bro. You might as well hit Savannah. Respond right here. Yeah. Jeff Vorick, respond right here. Hire Devin. All right? There we go. Hey, but y'all, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week with another jubilant episode with even less BS. 5 to go.